Edition of TNA Wrap Up, the source for TNA Wrap Up, all recaps of shows, opinions and all that I feel, my opinions on the TNA product are right here. If you like this video and seen it, please subscribe to my channel. I have more wrestling content, all kinds of variety and content on my page, gaming, topics, my other Team B member, Bullet B, he and I do a WWE show, but this is strictly TNA. This is my show, and if you like it, just like it and subscribe to my channel. Other people like TNA, hey, drop a like and subscribe to the channel here. You know, I'll try to include my Twitter and Instagram links in the description here. At the end of it, follow me if you get a chance. But as for we get ready into tonight's TNA show, what happened on the previous episode of TNA. It was pretty good, you know. I mean, there was a lot of talk about the contract signing and stuff last week with Matt and Jeff, and a lot of people saying things about it. But you know, they come back this week, and I think it's the go home show to Slammiversary, as you know, comes on pay-per-view this Sunday. I'm going to try to get a chance to catch it if I can. I may do a review show. I'm not sure yet. Don't count me to that, but I will try my best and do a TNA review show of it. But as we go ahead, we'll go ahead and get started on into the show. So we start the show, you know, and beginning by showing last week's recap of the contract signing, which is what I was telling you about. It's the contract signing between Matt and Jeff, where, you know, they're off in the gym, and you see Rebby toss Jeff the baby doll that he thinks is the real baby, which was stupid to begin with. And then Matt eventually puts Jeff through the middle of a table, which is one of those old round tables, you know, that's really supported in the center, and Jeff ends up dropping through that. And, you know, that had to hurt. That wasn't one of these breakaway tables like they typically have, but, you know, still they're trying to use this episode and say that Jeff is eventually out. But, you know, we see that happen, and, you know, Jeff eventually signs the contract. Matt signed it. It is official this coming weekend. We will have Slammiversary, a match between Matt and Jeff Hardy. This is a rivalry that has happened over time and time again that finally needs to come to an end. These guys need to go ahead and then get separated and go on to these different, you know, different battles and things to go and whatnot, matches to have in TNA, feuds to have. You know, this is one that we see that definitely needs to go. So, as like we did see the week before, we see this week, we see the show kicking off with Matt Hardy's music coming, you know, and he makes his way down to the ring. You know, he's got that hair that's half gray and half white. I mean, that he's got that kind of Phantom of the Opera look, if you want to say. You know, it was just coming down to the ring, and he's basically, they showed the clip of Jeff going through the table, and he just says, hey, that's it. That's the end of it. That's kind of what's going on, and basically that's the end of Jeff Hardy, you know. And he said that's the end of him, that you will see him either tonight or the end of you will see him of Slammiversary. So now he's trying to make it seem as if he's totally destroyed Jeff, and Jeff won't be at either the night or the show. So that's more yet to come, and we'll see eventually if that truly is the case as we get down into the show. But as we see tonight, he then begins talking. His focus begins to shift on the world title. And he says, now that the world title is now in my grasp and Jeff is out of the way, I'm going to focus on that. And as we see tonight, we see that Matt eventually, you know, he talks a little smack about Drew Galloway. Drew Galloway eventually hears enough of it. He's tired of hearing it. Matt's running in his mouth. He comes out, and they show a clip last week. And remember, last week, Drew Galloway defeated Jeff Hardy because Lashley gave him that spear that Drew didn't see. But anyway, Drew ended up defeating Jeff Hardy last week. And Drew is just astonished at how he has seen Matt change over the last few weeks. How, you know, and he even tells Matt in this discussion, he's like, look, you're stranger than what I even thought. He said, I used to remember you, but now I don't know what you are, you know, because Matt just has this deranged look, and he's speaking in this, like, old, I don't know what you call it, old language or something, and it's like you're watching a Shakespeare type theatrical performance by somebody. But he's telling him, he has never seen him like this. He says, you know what, Matt, you must be out of your mind because you're not in the right state of mind. And he said that, and Matt tells Jeff, not tells Jeff, tells Drew. He says, look, you wouldn't be world champion had it not been for Jeff. And they're going back to where they had that matchup between Jeff and Matt. And remember, Drew cashed in and went ahead and pinned and won the title. And so he says that just because of me defeating you before, he said I feel like I should have a part in the main event because the main event for the pay-per-view is Bobby Lashley versus Drew Galloway for the title. Well, Matt is very disgusted by this, so Matt decides he feels like he should have his own part in it as well. So we see that happen, and he says I feel like it. And Drew says, no, you're not going to have a main event. You're not going to be in the main event with me and Bobby because me and Bobby have a score that we need to settle. We've got our own issues to deal with. And then he goes back and Matt's talking to Drew, and he's basically trying to coerce him into getting a match. And eventually he does. Drew said, you know what? I want to go down as one of the greatest world champions. I want to be a fighting champion. I want to be someone who says no and doesn't and wants to defend the title. So we see he ends up telling him, he says, you know what? I'll do this. Even though there's a few days before our pay-per-view, less than a week before my pay-per-view match and my title match against Bobby Lashley, you know what, Matt Hardy? I'll give you that chance, and I will defend my title here tonight. So there we go. There we have it. That's our main event for tonight. We see Drew Galloway going to take on Matt Hardy, and we'll see more so of that match. Just hold on one second. My lighting is a little bit of an issue. Just hold on. Ah, much better, much better. Sorry for that little technical difficulty. Anyway, we come back from the break and we see that Jade, which is the TNA Knockouts champion, she's going to be ringside because she has a matchup tonight, and the winner of tonight's matchup will take on Jade for the TNA Knockouts title at Slammiversary. So she's going to be a spectator. She comes down to the ring, with the TNA Knockouts title, and she comes to sit ringside. And so then we have a #1 contenders matchup for the TNA Knockouts title match. And that involves Madison Rayne, and she's taking on Sienna. Now, folks, if you've known Sienna over the last few weeks as one of the knockouts, she is extremely, extremely powerful for a TNA knockout. Very strong. She has done a lot of dirty work for Maria over the last few weeks since she made her debut. And we see her coming down to the ring, and we see her, Maria's apprentice, Allie, come down. And she's talking all kinds of stuff, with that irritating, high-pitched voice. And she's talking about she's Maria's apprentice, and Maria's the first lady, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, she comes down, and we see it, and I'm thinking already, oh, man, Sienna is a very strong woman. And I've seen her fight against Gail Kim, and, now she's coming down, she's fighting against Madison Rayne, which, like I said, getting back into watching TNA, I haven't seen much of Madison Rayne really wrestle, but I know how Gail Kim is, and I know how I've been watching Sienna in her matches against whoever she's fought against, versus Velvet Sky, then Gail Kim, and I can tell she's a strong knockout. So right as we get along in the way, she said that that they're going for whoever wins. This is the #1 contenders for the title match, and so she kind of makes all the speculations and things and what's going on and how important this match really is. So they begin to lock up, and as they're going one-on-one with each other, we see that Josh is talking and commentating in this, and he's talking about how next week's show will actually be a live show, and that during that show they're going to have a announcement of who's going to be the 2016 TNA Hall of Fame inductee. So next week we'll find out who's going to be the next inductee into the TNA Hall of Fame. Now, I haven't read any sources. I haven't been able to catch up on any news this week, as it's been kind of a busy week for me. More, I would try to add that for you. If there's any additions or anything, try to add it on. But if not, then understand that I weren't able to get it like I was going to try to. But we'll find out, during the live show, of exactly what's going to happen. So we come back and we're in the match, and we see that Sienna is basically, of course, as she has been doing, dominating her matches. Very little offense Madison Rain has to give her. A few kicks, a few punches there. Not really a match. It's like, to me, like a squash. I mean, Sienna's not really faced anybody. I mean, her and Gail Kim did have a good match, but I've just seen a lot of squash because Sienna's just a strong knockout. So we end up, Sienna goes and picks up Madison Rain to put her finisher on her. And because Sienna, I can tell already, no sales, because, I mean, Madison Rain went and pick up this suplex and back suplex, belly to back suplexer. And it's like Sienna just got up like it didn't even affect her, and then puts her in that move. And I'm like, that's such a no sale. You got to really, really no sell in these matches for people to believe these moves actually hurt. I mean, if you're just picking them up and slamming them and they're not doing anything, just getting right up and no reaction like they're hurt or injured or anything, you just no sell it, then nobody's going to believe these things. That's why it's important to get your moves down, but also to sell the moves. Pretend like it hurts. Show that it hurts. You want your audience to see that. And it's like, I saw that and I was like, well, she sure is no selling that move. But she ends up putting her move on her. And then Allie comes into the ring. And so Sienna goes to put her in it again, to Madison Rain in the move again. Jade comes out, and Jade ends up showing some offense to her and does a kick to her, double kick to her to get her out, and she ends up going through the ropes out onto the outside. So we see them going back and forth. So now we've kind of set that up, which is decent because it's only 1 week for a feud between them two, but you've seen enough of Sienna to have. Jade, really, I hadn't seen much of, because really she hasn't been on TNA the last few weeks, or at least from me watching it, unless she was last week, to really get a good feel. But I've been watching Sienna for the last month or so. She's very strong. It wouldn't surprise me if Sienna does win, because, like I said, from Jade, knowing Jade, even though she could fight a little bit, she was in the dollhouse with Tara and Terrell, and I just didn't feel as if that was a strong out from group from the outset, and didn't really see a whole lot of Jade really fight. So I don't want to give my opinion. I just don't know, but I think she may end up winning. So we'll see at the pay-per-view what happens. So we come back. We see Maria, and she's cutting a promo in the back. She's talking about, she's going to defeat Gail Kim and whatnot. And she's the first lady of wrestling. And then, Mike DeMiracle's right beside of her. And Mike DeMiracle's talking about EC3. So that kind of sets up, and they cut a promo in tonight's matchup, as well as we have a mixed tag match. We have EC3 and Gail Kim take on the Miracle Mike Bennett. We have and his wife Maria. That's going to be later on in the matchup as we get to it. So we see that match cutting up in a promo as we see as those two take on each other. So next up, we see one of my guys, Eli Drake. Eli Drake, they show him in a promo of him climbing this mountain, I guess, to represent him winning the King of the Mountain title. And he's talking about it takes a lot to get to the top, and he's showing him, and then it cuts to him going to the back. Of course, he's got his little show on TNA called The Fact of Life, with his little dummy button and all that he pushes. And it's a little bit fun. It's funny, why not have your own show? Like I said, everybody else, you have the highlight reel and you have the Ambrose Asylum. Why not go ahead and have The Fact of Life with Eli Drake? But it's pretty good. I do like Eli Drake, and see him in action and stuff, and seeing his promo work. I think he can really do promos better than he can wrestle, but that's to be remain as we see. But he talks about Bram and defeating Bram, and how tonight's Fact of Life edition is going to be a championship edition. And Bram wasn't going to be invited because, Bram isn't the champion. So he calls out the Decay, which is, Crazy Steve, Rosemary, and the Monster Abyss. And they come out, and they have the titles, whatnot with them. And he talks about them, and he asked them, he said, look, I know you're cerebral, I know you're crazy, but he says, how are you going to plan on defeating the Bromans? And that's who, the Bromans, as we've seen with Raquel, they're trying to work their way up and win the TNA Tag Team Championship. That's why they hired Raquel to be their guru and helping them to obtain those titles. And and Abyss and Crazy Steve, all of them get it. He says, Crazy Steve says, oh, we have a lot of craziness in every one of us, but we like to embrace it. So, he's trying to say that's what we're all about. And then Rosemary talks a little bit, and Abyss talks about them. And it's just amazing to me how, the promo work is pretty decent. No issues with their promo work. But then all of a sudden, we see the Bromans come in, and we see their music hits, and they come down with Raquel, and then we see here that they're because they're the number one contenders for the titles, and then they said they're going to end up defeating the Decay. Beat their ass is what they said. I still won't say it, but that's what they said beat their asses, and they were going to become 3-time tag team champions in that. And then all of a sudden, Grotto and Shira come out there, and they start talking, and all of a sudden the Tribunal, which is that new tag team I was telling you about a couple weeks ago. Like I said last week, I didn't do a wrap-up show and get their name, but that's what they're the two guys with France written on the back. But that is indeed the Tribunal with Al Snow, and he's their, I guess, coach or manager or whatever he is. They come out here, they attack Grotto and Shira from behind, and then Robbie E ends up, they go out there and everybody starts fighting. So the show goes off commercial. When we come back, there's a 10-man tag team matchup that is happening. Of course, why not? Why would you not have it? Everybody's in there fighting. Why not throw them all in a 10-man tag match? We see on one side, you see the Decay, you see the Tribunal, and what else? No, and then they go against Shira, Bram, Grotto, and the Bromans. So we see that matchup happen. And, Al Snow, to me, folks, was really, really annoying throughout their matchup because that stupid whistle he kept blowing. Even Josh brought it up. Josh has a lot of stuff to say. I mean, he's one very opinionated guy. But I agree with him. Al Snow just blew that freaking whistle way too much during the whole show. After somebody would do a move, he would blow it. I mean, it'd get on your mind and drive you crazy, but that's just what he did. So anyway, as we see at the beginning of the matchup, the heels team, and I'll just call them that, you know who they are, basically control the match. They kind of focus on one person. They use a lot of quick tags, a lot of keeping them in the corner, a lot of double teams, which is pretty much your heel persona and their heel matchup. So we see them heal up, and then we see that goes in Jesse Goddard of the Bromans gets the hot tag. Jesse comes in, starts slamming, starts punching. He basically gets all of the heel team off the ropes and down and whatnot, which is typically what you would see in a hot tag. And then he takes all the members out of the group. And then Monster Abyss comes in from behind and helps him out. And then when Shira comes in, throws out Abyss. And then Robbie E, while he's on the inside, he gets on the top rope and jumps and does a high spot onto the heel team. So we see our high spots happen in this matchup. We see Bram, once we focus back, Bram's in the ring. Bram's trying to take control of the situation. He gets along with Eli Drake, and they're facing each other in the ring, and they're going back and forth. And then Grotto Eli Drake gets the best of Bram. Grotto comes in. Grotto ends up taking Eli Drake down. And then finally, Eli takes down Grotto after interference from the Tribunal. Then we have our 1, 2, 3, and here's your match. Winner of your matchup. We have the Decay, the Tribunal with Al Snow taking the matchup and taking the win for this matchup. So pretty decent. You have so many guys in the ring. Sometimes you don't get quite everything in. Thought it was a decent match for it being a 10-man tag matchup. So high spots in the match, pretty decent. I thought overall it was a pretty decent match considering, the number of people. I don't like 10-man tag matches. At least 3 on each side is cool with me, but it is what it is. I guess with the show they were putting on, they want to get everybody into the pay-per-view and everybody teamed against each other, which is typically what they do to begin with. So that's what we see in this. And we see EC3 and Gail Kim. Now they're being interviewed in the back. And Gail mentions how Maria isn't going to be able to hide behind her husband. She's not going to be able to hide at all. And she ends up, and she now has her own partner. And the reason why is because remember the other week, Maria was triple teamed really by Sienna and Allie and Maria. And they all jumped on her. She's like, now I got a partner. I'm not going to be by myself. And her partner is none other than EC3. Which EC3 is starting to become a favorite of mine. The more I watch it, the more I'm starting to begin to like EC3 and whatnot, kind of being on one of my favorites list. But EC3 comes out and he cuts a promo about the matchup at Slammiversary with Eli Drake, and he cuts folks, this is a really good promo. Now, the reason why I like EC3 is his wrestling, but more so is he can cut a good promo. Now, this was an awesome promo because some of the things he said are like this. He says that he's going to go into the field of battle. He says, I'm going to go into the field of battle, and I'm going to be, now these words are, I'm going to be equipped, I'm going to equip the helmet of salvation and carry the sword of redemption. And he says, this battle isn't just a battle of a man versus God or good versus evil, but it's a battle to who's determined, who's the best, and that who the future is and who is the now. And at the pay-per-view, he said he's going to stand above Eli Drake, illuminated with the tribe of victory, and that Bennett himself will be breathing nothing but the shame of defeat. And I'm like, wow, that's a good promo. That is an awesome promo to cut by EC3, because I never really listened to his promo, but him to do that, it made you feel passionate and emotionally invested into the match. He needs to keep that up. I love a good promo, more so than a lot of times I love wrestling, because that gets the crowd to behind you. Is more so your mic work rather than it just being just wrestling in the ring. And I feel like promos help that out. So we see that now that he cut a really good promo. I was just sitting there like, wow, and I was thinking to myself out loud, I'm like, man, this dude can cut a promo. He's definitely somebody to watch out for. Somebody to really look at. He says, by one thing, he says, I'm going to find out who the one true franchise of this place is, and that's EC3. So I'm like, you're right. Make him the franchise of your... AJ Styles is done gone. AJ is now with WWE. Make this man your franchise. That's what you need to do, TNA. Make him, because he's one of your... You took him from WWE when they didn't want him, and you're making him into something. Don't drop the ball with this dude. Make him your franchise, and make him the guy for not just, like he says now, who's in the now, but who's going to be your future. So I just think he's making cut promos and whatnot, and I just enjoy watching his work. So he really is coming out, and I think he's going to be a really good face. I'm seeing him now as full face, and I think he's doing great. Just keep him face. He's cutting these great promos that you're getting people behind him. So we come up next, and they show a recap of what happened last week between Galloway and Hardy. And we see that Lashley goes up and he walks up to Matt Hardy. And they're going back and forth because Matt says, look, don't act upset because of the position that I'm in right now. And Lashley's like, he doesn't care. He says, look, no matter what, he said, I beat Drew. He says, I can beat you. He says, don't matter. Don't you think that I can, he says, don't you think that I can't beat you as well? And he says, I won't let this happen. I'm not going to let this happen. So we see that's kind of foreshadowing something in the main event if Lashley's telling Hardy that he's not going to let anything happen. So what does that mean? We'll just have to wait and see. But as we get down into the main event, but Lashley apparently is going to have his part some way, shape, or form. So up next we come and we have the matchup. Of the mixed tag team matchup between the Miracle Mike Bennett and Maria versus Gail Kim and EC3. They showed this weigh-in, which I think is funny because it's just a tag matchup, and they do a weigh-in between EC3 and Eli Drake, and they kind of, excuse me, Miracle Mike Bennett, and they show them weighing in their weights, and then that typical stare down they had, and then Mike Bennett was pushing EC3, and EC3 pushed him back. And then, of course, you had the referees separate what was going to happen. And I just kind of thought that was funny that they would even do something like that. I mean, they'll do some things I just wouldn't believe they'd do. And that was just one of them, showing a weigh-in of the matchup. But that's what they decided to do. So we end up Maria coming back to the arena. Maria grabs the mic, and she's in the ring with Mike Bennett again and stuff, and she starts talking about how she's the first lady of wrestling, and she's the leader of the women's division, the Knockouts division in TNA, and she says that she is going to exercise her right to not have to fight the wrestle tonight. So she ends up choosing her apprentice, Allie, to fight for her. Now, like I said, we've seen her. She's not a fighter. I mean, she's just the typical, apprentice, walks around. She does all of Maria's business and stuff and talks for her. But apparently, she looks kind of like when Maria says that Allie's going to do her work for her, she kind of gave her this scared look, like a deer in the headlights kind of look in what she's, and knowing because she knows she don't wrestle. She knows getting in there that she's not going to wrestle, but she has no choice. She's the apprentice, so she ends up doing what Maria wants her to do. So we see her get in the ring, and she gets tagged in first. From Mike Bennett tags her in first, like the chicken heel kind of tag in. And so she comes in there, and she's looking at EC3, and she's talking in that really high-pitched sound. And it's so loud, it's like one of those glass breaking sounds. She's talking so loud that Eli, poor EC3 keeps going in the back, and he's holding his hands over his ears like she is just too loud. And he ends up tagging in, and he says, and then he goes and tags in Gail Kim, and her and Gail Kim go at it back and forth. And actually, Allie does get a little bit of offense in the fight. As we go back and see EC3 and Mike Bennett going at it, she gets a little bit of offensive in this matchup because Maria, of course, helps her from the outside, and Mike and EC3 and Mike both get tagged in, and they're working on going back and forth, and Allie tries to, and Gail Kim gets Allie on the outside, and Gail Kim jumps off the top rope. She's going to dive on Maria and Allie, but Maria pull out of the way, and Allie's the one that ended up getting landed on. So you kind of see, I'm predicting it now, but you're going to see somehow a split later on because Allie's going to get tired of taking bumps and stuff from Maria after a while. I just kind of see that happening. You can kind of see that happening as well once you, see it and know what's going on in it. But we see that, Allie, and she jumps on Allie in the EC3. He's standing in the ring as he's watching Gail Kim jump on Allie, and Mike Bennett has a chair, and EC3 turns around, and he catches him, and he drops the chair, and he runs to the back. So then we see EC3 chasing after him, and runs him to the back. And I was like, oh man, I was hoping to see him tied up there in the ring. But then we see that basically it centers around, the match ends up centering around Gail Kim. And we saw a week before last when I was doing it, she got double teamed, or triple teamed really, with Maria and Sienna and Allie. And we see it again this week, only this time they use a chair on Gail Kim. And Sienna throws her to land awkward on her knee. So then she starts holding her knee, and they get a chair. and they put her leg on a chair, and they take another chair, and they end up hitting her leg on the chair, and I guess it's supposed to injure her leg. She's in pain. She's yelling. She's hurting, grabbing her leg. So then we see this happening, and it's all a numbers game, really. I mean, is this going to happen at the pay-per-view? Is it going to be another numbers deal with Maria and her group against Gail Kim? Is Gail Kim going to be by herself yet again to have to deal with all three of them? I mean, that remains to be seen. But it's just been going on for the last few weeks of them having the upper hand with Maria, with Gail, because there's three people going against Gail Kim in this matchup, or at least they're all using the numbers game to go. So we see them eventually it ending up, and Maria's hurting. I mean, Gail Kim is hurting in the ring, and we see it cut to commercial. So up next is advertised that there's going to be another X Division title matchup, which I love the X Division. Between the current champion, Trevor Lee of the Helms Dynasty. He's taking on one half of the Wolves, Eddie Edwards, which I like Eddie Edwards. I think he's really good. And Eddie Edwards, from the get-go, before Trevor Lee can even come into the ring, because they know that Helms is sneaky, he's going to have a plan, and he's going to go after him. So Eddie Edwards takes the initiative. He goes in after Trevor Lee and begins taking the fight to him. So, really good start off. And I like when these guys can take the head and begin the match off and just take it to them. When they wait around, it just seems like it can take forever when that happens. So, Eddie goes right at him. Eddie works on some offense, the first quick start is what happens in this matchup. And then eventually Trevor turns the tide and he begins, the heels always got to have their punishment to take in and whatnot. And he is, Eddie ends up hitting kind of back-to-back spots on Trevor because when he tries to get on the top rope, Andrew Everett interferes after Helms is trying to interfere with the referee. So the referee doesn't see it, and then Trevor Lee is in the ring, and we see Eddie Edwards on top getting ready to do a spot on him, and we see Andrew Everett interfere. So then out of nowhere, DJZ comes up. He takes out Everett. Now, then Helms comes by and catches DJZ from behind. So here we go again, yet another 2 week, two-time numbers game playing on this into a factor with the matchup, as we've seen just with Maria and those. Now we see Helms being that third person in this. But I mean, the high spot's really good. I like Eddie Edwards. He can do these. He lands on Helms, then he lands on Lee for the matchup, and then we see that he ends up Eddie Edwards Eddie Edwards was going to do I think it's called the chin jar. He was going to do on Trevor Lee, but Trevor Lee reverses it, and you don't really know how strong someone is, but all in one motion, Trevor Lee catches him, and he catches him, and he does he reverses Eddie Edwards' move, and he doesn't just get leverage. Wrestling, a lot of times when they do suplexes, belly to back suplexes, they get that leverage and the other wrestler helps him. But I seen Trevor just really strongly just threw Eddie Edwards over in a belly to back suplex, and I was like, dang, that's strong. Never do you really see wrestlers you have to use their strength without the other person helping them, but he just does. And then we see that ends up coming up to find out what happens is the referee gets distracted, and Helms comes through and hits Eddie Edwards with the X Division title, which enables Trevor Lee to roll him up with the tights for the 1, 2, 3. Yet again, we see when it all comes down to it, good match. You see Trevor Lee come out just by the skin, and usually that's the way heels usually win, narrowly winning by cheating, That's how it wins. So we see another week Trevor Lee keeps the X Division title from, because you remember last at the Ultimate X matchup. Remember, Edwards had the title, but the referee didn't see it because he was distracted. And remember, Trevor Lee snatched it from him and fell down, and the referee saw that and awarded him the title in the matchup. So we see it kind of being the advantage of Trevor Lee of being in the Helms Dynasty and having that assistance, being the heel and needing help to win. So pretty good matchup, I would say, in that. As we come back from commercial, we see Lashley going to Drew this time. And he's talking to Drew about what they've been through. And Lashley mentions Drew and telling Drew he's going to knock him out or tap him out. And Drew's told him, look, I'll say this, I'll keep it short and sweet. He says, I tapped out Kurt Angle, so what makes you think I don't tap you out? And then when he says that, Lashley walks off. And they come back, and Gail Kim is back in the back receiving medical attention. She's hurting. She's talking about getting in the back. She says, I've got to be ready for my matchup. I got to be ready for Slammiversary. I got to do this. I got to do this. And so every time the medical staff would grab her leg or ask her to hurt, she was hollering. So we're going to see apparently that leg injury play in a part to the pay-per-view matchup with her having that. Because I've not really seen Maria fight. Don't know if she can fight. I know Gail Kim can, so maybe they're just doing this as a little bit of leverage, giving it to Maria with her having a leg to make up for her lack of wrestling ability if she can. Maybe she can, maybe she can't, folks. I'm not really sure of that. But as we come back, we see that there's a new guy making his debut this week, a new wrestler signed to TNA. His name is Braxton Miller. And Braxton Sutter make his TNA debut. I think the guy's name they pronounced because they didn't even show his graphic. And of course, it was a jobber. Usually when you have a guy trying to make a name, you'll find a jobber or two first to get his name out there. But this dude's, I believe his name was Brooke Callis. I believe is what they were calling his name. But anyway, for it being a match, it's your typical debut match. You show some moves off what you have. The jobber gets a few moves in, but for the main part is to show off the talent that Braxton Sutter is. He looked decent in the ring. He's got some good moves, good movement. Not a big, very tall guy, but he's a very strong-looking guy, in my opinion. And I think he's going to do well in the long run. But it's your basic squash matchup, just a showcase match. Nothing really fancy or nothing in this matchup, but it was a good debut for him. He had the fans behind him. It seemed like he was getting the fans behind him, and he was going to basically go out and he was talking to the fans. And so after that, basically you see them. He's telling the fans, he said, "Look, I'm new. I'm glad to be here," but he says, I'm able to go and I want to make a name for myself. I've got plans for TNA. And he says, look, I want to be able to make it to TNA, and I want to go for the world title. I'm going to shake up the TNA Foundation. So that's what we see in this interview that he has. So it's a really good matchup, and it's a really good view, and they talk to him afterwards, which is good because then you give him a voice, and now people knows what he's all about. So Braxton Sutter makes a good TNA debut. Up next, we see Willow. Willow cuts a promo, and apparently he's going to make his way out tonight. And we see that Willow is going to basically talking to Matt Hardy, and he's saying how Matt Hardy thinks he's gotten rid of that surprises await Matt Hardy. And we go and basically see Matt Hardy basically just we see him kind of giving his weirdness because, Matt's been dressing up like him lately, and, basically we've seen it all come through, and now we're going to see Willow have his part because apparently Jeff's not there because apparently he's taken out. So he cuts a promo, and then we come back yet again. A lot of promos, folks. They're cutting in promos. They're going to get in these talks, but it's EC3. He's in the back. I don't mind. Want to hear what he's got to say, and he talks, and, and he says it doesn't. He says, "Look, I've been here, so and so years. You've been here so and so months. It doesn't matter. All it's going to boil down to is who's the battle of the best, and that's going to come down this. And then they start discussing the rundown for the pay-per-view coming up, and then we see a promo video of the feud between Lashley and Galloway come up really good, to where they've gotten now. And we see Matt Hardy coming up to the ring first. He's, followed by Drew Galloway. And Galloway takes it at Hardy. And so he does a lot of chops to Hardy, even on the outside. But once they get on the outside, that's where Matt kind of turns and he does what I said, a rock bottom. Cause a rock bottom on Drew Galloway on the outside onto the steel stage steps, and that's where it kind of turns the tide for a little bit in this matchup. And then Hardy gets some sort of offense on EC3. It's kind of that turning tide of the matchup. And as we see, the ending comes as a short match, not much happening because as Drew Galloway is in the corner setting up for the Claymore, which is, I guess, that kick he does. And Lashley comes in, interferes in the match. He goes off and he takes down Drew. And Drew ends up in the corner. Lashley goes for the spear. Drew spins out of the way, throws Lashley on the outside. And both guys end up going and they're fighting and they're going all the way to the back yet again. I don't know what's so interesting about the back. But they're going to the back again. And they're fighting, and this leads Matt Hardy into the middle of the ring. And so now we still don't know if Matt's going to be a part of it or not, the main event, because he didn't win or lose. Lashley basically interfered. So he's saying, what about me, what about me? And then out of nowhere, we see Willow's laugh go off, and then the lights go out, and it's dark. Then when it comes back on, all of the fans around the ring in the front are wearing Willow masks and stuff, and then you see like 4 Willows line up across the front of the stage, and you see Willow talking, and then out of nowhere, he said that Jeff Hardy is now free, and then out of nowhere, Jeff Hardy's music hits. So you hear Willow talk, then you hear Jeff Hardy come to the ring, and Jeff goes and he's wearing his green makeup or his paint, comes down to the ring, rushes it, and he and Matt fight, and then they fight until eventually as TNA goes off the air. So we'll just see this feud, what's going to happen, how it's going to happen. TNA, Matt didn't lose because of Lashley's interference. Lashley was just going to have none of it. He wasn't going to let there be a finish to this matchup. But we see that happen with Lashley interfering. So this is going to further their pay-per-view feud between Lashley and Drew. Well, their matchup at the TNA Slammiversary, and then we're going to see the Hardys, of course, face off against each other, and hopefully their final matchup. So that's what TNA was all about. Thought it was a good show, good storylines leading into the pay-per-view. Everybody was involved. It's going to be involved in the pay-per-view, which is always a good thing, and it led them on. So for TNA tonight and the wrap-up show, until next time, like I said, I may try to do a review show. I'll just have to wait and see. So until next time, for TNA Wrap-Up Show, this is your host, Bill Mack here. And take care. And I am out of here.